You almost feel out of a job, at least as a pilot, when you fly on SpaceX's Crew Dragon. That's what many astronauts say after experiencing this next-generation spacecraft. After years of upgrades and testing, SpaceX has turned Dragon into one of the most refined and efficient crew vehicles ever built, leaving every other spacecraft, even Boeing's Starliner, struggling to keep up. And here is the secret. SpaceX built Dragon for the future, for the astronauts who will one day head to Mars, the generation that grew up using touchscreens, not rows of buttons and levers. Starliner, on the other hand, takes a more traditional route. It sticks with aviation-style controls that feel familiar to pilots. Of course, there is a clear trade-off between innovation and tradition. But in return, SpaceX has built a spacecraft so advanced that once astronauts experience it, it's hard to imagine flying any other way. Find out everything in today's TechMap episode. What sets SpaceX's Crew Dragon apart from other spacecraft docked with the ISS? To understand that, it helps to compare it side by side with two other spacecraft, Boeing's Starliner and Russia's Soyuz. Both Crew Dragon and Starliner are modern American spacecraft, each designed to carry up to 7 people, though NASA missions typically fly with 4. The Soyuz, by contrast, is a product of an earlier era. It seats 3 tightly packed cosmonauts in a small descent module that prioritizes reliability and weight savings over comfort. That difference in design philosophy is clear. Developed in the 1960s, Soyuz separates into 3 modules, keeping its re-entry capsule small to simplify land landings under parachutes. Dragon and Starliner, using newer materials and technology, consist of just 2 major sections. This allows for a single large capsule with more interior space and upright seating arranged in 2 rows. Comfort, however, is not the only advantage. Both American vehicles integrate their launch escape systems directly into the spacecraft rather than relying on external towers, improving safety and reducing weight. Crew Dragon takes ease of use even further. Its large side hatch makes boarding simpler, even in full pressure suits. Once in orbit, astronauts can unbuckle and float freely inside its roomy 9.3 cubic meter cabin, spacious enough for movement in zero gravity. When its nose cone opens, the view from the wide observation window offers a panoramic look at Earth, turning the cabin into a small observatory. Boeing's Starliner is a bit tighter, with entry through a front hatch leading to a compact cockpit. It's practical for 2 pilots, but more confined for 4 crew members. The Soyuz, by comparison, has an even smaller top hatch, giving it one of the most restrictive interiors still in use. SpaceX's design clearly favors modern ergonomics and simplicity. Instead of hundreds of physical switches and knobs, Crew Dragon features large touchscreens that dynamically display only the information needed for each phase of flight: navigation, docking, or monitoring systems. This layout reduces clutter, streamlines operation, and allows astronauts to focus on key tasks while onboard computers handle precision maneuvers. The touchscreens are engineered for reliability, capable of functioning under vibration and acceleration, and are responsive even when operated with gloves. Tested under conditions similar to those in advanced fighter jets, they represent a leap forward in how spacecraft are flown. One of Crew Dragon's most remarkable achievements lies in the deep integration between its spacecraft systems and astronaut equipment. SpaceX designed its spacesuits to work seamlessly with Crew Dragon's touchscreen controls through gloves with conductive fingertips. This feature allows astronauts to tap, swipe, and operate displays accurately while remaining fully suited, crucial for manual control during docking or emergency procedures. The glove design uses capacitive materials similar to those found in touchscreen-compatible winter gloves, allowing reliable input without sacrificing protection. Astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley trained extensively on these systems before their 2020 mission, refining their techniques to ensure precise operation even under vibration and acceleration. Boeing's CST-100 Starliner, though developed in the same era, reflects a different design philosophy. Its cockpit resembles a modern aircraft flight deck, filled with numerous physical switches and controls. This approach stems from aviation's conservative nature, where safety and familiarity remain central. Pilots and astronauts, many of whom come from aviation backgrounds, often prefer tactile feedback from physical buttons and toggles. Boeing's layout appeals to that familiarity. SpaceX, by contrast, represents a new direction. Although touchscreens in aerospace settings once raised safety concerns, NASA's approval of Crew Dragon's interface marked a significant vote of confidence. SpaceX invested heavily in testing and validation to prove that its fully digital control system could perform reliably under all mission conditions. Software-driven interfaces also offer flexibility. Unlike physical panels, which require hardware modifications for upgrades, touchscreens can be updated through software changes, allowing faster adaptation and long-term improvements. This adaptability aligns with future exploration goals, as the next generation of astronauts, those who will one day travel to Mars, will likely be more comfortable using digital interfaces than traditional control panels. No one understands these spacecraft better than the astronauts who have flown them. Their first-hand experiences highlight the unique character of each vehicle. Megan MacArthur, pilot of Crew 2, described SpaceX's Crew Dragon as a smooth and gentle ride. "The ride was really smooth. We couldn't have asked for anything better," she said during the orbital tour, describing the gentle launch. Crew 1 Commander Mike Hopkins praised the spacecraft's precision after docking, while Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who later flew on Dragon after their Starliner mission, noted its sleeker design with fewer buttons and totally automatic operation, and even joked about how there's more Velcro on SpaceX Dragon. Boeing's Starliner received its own praise from Wilmore, who said, "The spacecraft handled remarkably well, much better even than the simulator," calling it fairly roomy for a two-person crew. Suni Williams added, "We have controls to fly the spacecraft. Butch got to do some manual piloting on the docking." After returning to Earth, both astronauts affirmed their confidence in Starliner's capabilities. "The spacecraft is really capable. I'd get on Starliner in a heartbeat," appreciating its strong manual control features. The Soyuz, on the other hand, is often remembered for its cramped interior. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, who flew a Soyuz mission to the ISS in 2012 to 2013, described, "The Soyuz was very cramped and uncomfortable. The entire vehicle was filled with equipment and supplies. Each spacecraft reflects a distinct design philosophy. The Soyuz values durability rooted in decades of proven engineering. Starliner maintains aviation-style controls that appeal to pilot familiarity, and Crew Dragon moves toward digital automation and integrated technology. Together, they illustrate how human spaceflight continues to evolve, from compact Soviet-era capsules to modern software-driven spacecraft built for the next generation of exploration." So, which one do you think best represents the future of human space travel? Soyuz, Starliner, or Dragon? Share your thoughts below. Another clear distinction between modern and traditional spacecraft lies in their use of automation. SpaceX's Crew Dragon and Boeing's Starliner are designed to operate with minimal manual input. Both have proven they can complete entire missions without astronauts at the controls. Crew Dragon's Demo 1 mission in 2019 autonomously docked with the ISS, and Starliner's Orbital Flight Test 2 in 2022 did the same before its first crewed launch. Crew Dragon represents a fully modern approach to spacecraft design. About 99% of each flight, launch, orbit, docking, and re-entry is handled automatically by its onboard computers and touchscreen interface. Astronauts mainly serve as supervisors, trained to take over only in contingency situations. During some missions, crews have performed brief manual control checks to confirm system performance, but otherwise the spacecraft flies itself. Starliner takes a slightly different approach, giving pilots more manual options. Its cockpit includes rotational and translational hand controllers for docking and attitude control. During Starliner's crew flight test, astronaut Butch Wilmore demonstrated manual piloting during approach due to the technical issues. Of course, in the normal condition, as said, the spacecraft was fully capable of completing docking autonomously. Automation is not the only area where the new generation of spacecraft stands out. SpaceX's Crew Dragon offers NASA a more affordable option at about $55 million per seat, compared with roughly $90 million for both Boeing's Starliner and Russia's Soyuz. Crew Dragon and Starliner can remain docked to the ISS for up to 210 days, about 7 months, while the Soyuz must return after 180 days. This longer endurance gives NASA more flexibility in scheduling missions and better value for its investment. If you've stayed with us this far, here's a bonus insight. Why does SpaceX's Crew Dragon usually take much longer to reach the station than Russia's Soyuz? Crew Dragon's trip typically lasts between 19 and 30 hours, while Soyuz often completes the same journey in about 3. The difference comes down to a mix of orbital mechanics, launch flexibility, mission planning, and each program's design philosophy. First, consider orbital mechanics. After launch, a spacecraft does not fly directly to the ISS. Instead, it enters a lower orbit and gradually adjusts its altitude through a series of engine burns, called phasing burns, to align its path with the station's. This process, known as a Hohmann transfer, relies on precise timing and positioning, which can naturally extend the total travel time. The next factor is launch timing. Soyuz missions are scheduled with extremely tight accuracy. They require a narrow phase angle, about 12 to 18 degrees, between the launch site and the ISS's orbital position. This precision allows for a rapid 3-hour rendezvous, but leaves little room for flexibility. Crew Dragon, by contrast, is designed to handle a much broader phase angle window, typically between 170 and 320 degrees. That flexibility makes scheduling launches easier, especially when weather or technical delays occur, but it also results in a slower approach to the station. Mission priorities also influence timing. NASA and SpaceX place strong emphasis on crew safety, comfort, and workload balance. Docking operations are scheduled to ensure good lighting conditions, clear communication links, and alignment with the astronauts' sleep schedules. While this adds extra hours to the timeline, it helps ensure that the crew arrives well-rested and focused for the critical docking phase. After a medical emergency on the station, NASA has decided to bring SpaceX Crew 11 home early. They're undocking on January 14th, 7.5 days from when the medical issue happened. 7.5 days. Now, let's talk about what China did with Shenzhou 20. Shenzhou 20's spacecraft got damaged in orbit, not the station, the actual return vehicle, which means those 3 astronauts literally could not come home in their own ride. That's a problem. A big one. So what did China do? Shenzhou 21 was already up there, had just arrived recently, docked nearby. They just moved the Shenzhou 20 crew over to Shenzhou 21 and brought them down. November 14th, 9 days after the damage. Then, Shenzhou 22 launches uncrewed as the new backup in 11 more days. At first glance, Dragon. 7.5 days from medical issue to home. Shenzhou. 9 days from damage to the home. Both response times are nearly identical, but the how is completely different, and that's where Dragon pulls ahead. Here's the thing people don't talk about enough. These are fundamentally different spacecraft. Shenzhou is based on the Soyuz design. 3 modules: descent module, orbital module, service module. Total pressurized volume is about 6 cubic meters. It's proven, it's reliable, it works. Dragon is a single integrated capsule. 9.3 cubic meters of pressurized space. Everything in one shell. That's 50% more volume. In a rescue scenario where you might be cramming extra crew or need room for medical equipment, that actually matters. But it's not just about space. Dragon has Super Draco abort engines built into the capsule walls, mid-flight escape capability at any point during ascent. If something goes catastrophically wrong on the way up, those engines fire and pull the capsule away from the rocket. Shenzhou has a traditional escape tower. Works great, but only during early launch. Once you're past that phase, the tower's gone. Dragon can abort all the way to orbit. Shenzhou can't. Remember how Shenzhou 20 got damaged? Orbital debris hit it. That's why they couldn't use it to come home. Dragon has autonomous debris avoidance. The spacecraft actively monitors for collision threats and performs evasion maneuvers on its own. No human input required. Shenzhou doesn't have this. Their solution is the one launch, one standby policy. Always have another rocket ready in case something breaks. Which works. But it's reactive, not preventive. Dragon tries to avoid getting hit in the first place. Shenzhou has a backup ready when something does get hit. One's playing defense, one's playing logistics. Both are valid, but defense seems smarter when you're in a tiny metal can surrounded by debris traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. And here's the kicker. The tech that lets Dragon do autonomous collision avoidance? Chinese engineers reportedly called similar real-time orbit adjustments impossible to implement reliably. Dragon's been doing it for years. Dragon can fly over 10 missions. Same capsule, refurbish it, fly it again. Shenzhou is single-use. Okay, but who cares about reusability in a rescue? You should. Because if you've got a fleet of Dragons that have already flown multiple times, you know they work, you've got flight-proven hardware with documented performance histories. Every Shenzhou is new, untested in flight until that specific mission. Yeah, they're built to the same specs, but you don't have the same confidence that comes from this exact capsule has flown 6 times before. Plus, reusability means more available vehicles. NASA's got multiple Dragons in rotation. China is launching new Shenzhous as needed. Shenzhou docks faster, 6 to 7 hours, semi-automated with crew monitoring. Dragon takes 18 to 24 hours, fully autonomous. On paper, Shenzhou wins this one. In an emergency, faster is better, right? Except Dragon's full autonomy means the crew doesn't have to do anything. If your crew is sick, injured, or dealing with a crisis, you don't want them flying the spacecraft. You want it to fly itself. The Crew 11 astronaut said, and this is a real quote, "Dragon provides a safe, reliable, and flexible capability to bring us home on short notice when it's the right thing to do. That flexibility comes from autonomy. You don't need a healthy crew to operate it." Dragon. Approximately 4G maximum during re-entry. Ocean splashdown. Relatively smooth. Shenzhou. Approximately 5 to 6G ballistic re-entry. Land touchdown on solid ground. If you're bringing home someone with a medical issue, which one sounds better? Lower G-forces and a water landing, or higher G-forces and slamming into the desert? Yeah, thought so. Shenzhou's land landing is actually really impressive from an engineering standpoint. Retro rockets fire right before touchdown to cushion the impact. But it's still a harder ride than bobbing in the ocean waiting for recovery ships. Dragon can stay docked as a lifeboat for 210+ days. Shenzhou maxes out around 180 days. That's an extra month of emergency capability. If you're planning long-duration missions and something goes wrong late in the mission, Dragon gives you more margin. This sounds minor until you realize rescue scenarios often involve stressed, injured, or sick crew members. Dragon, 9.3 cubic meters, touchscreen controls, more modern life support. Shenzhou, 6 cubic meters, more cramped, older analog-style systems. Both handle 3 crews safely. But if you're spending 24 hours in that capsule coming home from a crisis, you want the roomier one with better environmental controls. Look, I'm not saying Shenzhou is bad. It's a solid spacecraft that does its job. The one launch, one standby policy is genuinely smart. Always having a backup rocket ready to go means you can respond to situations Dragon can't, like the Shenzhou 20 damage scenario, where you need a whole new vehicle immediately. NASA has been doing this since the very first space stations in the 1970s. Back in 1973, thruster leaks on Skylab 3's Apollo service module forced NASA to prepare the Skylab 4 Saturn 1B rocket and an Apollo spacecraft for a potential emergency launch, ready to dock with Skylab if things got worse. Dragon's advantage assumes the Dragon itself isn't the problem. If your Dragon gets damaged as Shenzhou 20 did, you're waiting weeks for Crew 12 to arrive. Shenzhou launched a replacement in 11 days. That's real redundancy. But that's a logistics advantage, not a spacecraft advantage. It's China's launch readiness and mission planning, not the vehicle itself. Here's where Dragon's tech really matters. Tiangong, China's space station, operates in a debris-heavy orbit. If you're running rescue missions in that environment, you want autonomous debris avoidance. Dragon has it. Mid-flight abort capability. Dragon has it. Lower G-force re-entry for potentially injured crew. Dragon has it. Longer lifeboat duration. Dragon has it. More interior space for medical equipment. Dragon has it. Shenzhou's answer to this is, have another rocket ready. Which works, but it's reacting to problems instead of preventing them. Dragon's answer is, avoid the debris, abort if needed, bring them home gently. Prevention beats reaction. When I said both systems work, I meant it. Shenzhou 20's crew got home safe. Crew 11 is coming home safe, but both work doesn't mean both are equal. Dragon has better tech, more redundancy in the capsule itself, autonomous systems that don't require crew input, lower G-forces, more space, reusability that proves reliability, and debris avoidance that keeps it from getting hit in the first place. Shenzhou has faster docking and a really good ground logistics system with standby rockets. If I'm choosing which one I'd want to rescue me from a crisis, Dragon. Every time. It's not about nationalism or fanboyism. It's about looking at the actual capabilities and asking, which one gives me the best chance of getting home safely when everything's gone wrong? And the answer is the spacecraft that can dodge debris, abort at any point during launch, fly itself without crew input, bring me home at lower G-forces, and has already proven it can do all of this across multiple flights. The Crew 11 situation is proving this right now. Medical emergency happens, Dragon just handles it. 7.5 days from problem to splashdown. No backup launches needed, no crew transfers, no gaps in coverage. The spacecraft itself is the solution. That's what superior engineering looks like. So yeah, I stand by saying both systems work and both deserve respect. But if we're being honest, which one is the better rescue vehicle for high-risk scenarios? Dragon wins. More tech, more autonomy, more safety margins, more proven reliability. Shenzhou is solid, reliable, and gets the job done. That's genuinely good. Dragon is all of that, plus advanced enough to solve problems that Chinese engineers called impossible. That's better. You can acknowledge China's achievements and still recognize when SpaceX has built something superior. Both things can be true. Anyway, let me know what you think. I know this one's going to be more controversial than the last take, but I think the evidence backs it up. Dragon's not just different, it's better. 2026 is shaping up to be an epic year for SpaceX. Elon Musk's space company has just pulled off something no one else has ever done, securing a massive $739 million Pentagon contract for every single mission under the latest national security launch program. That means SpaceX gets the full package with nothing left for competitors like ULA's Vulcan or Blue Origin's New Glenn. These aren't routine satellite launches. The 9 missions SpaceX just won are part of the NSSL Phase 3 Lane 1 program designed by the Pentagon to guarantee reliable and secure access to space. In other words, these launches carry the backbone of America's defense network missions that go far beyond normal commercial or scientific goals. The primary cargo includes the Space Development Agency's Tranche 2 tracking layer satellites, a network designed to spot enemy missile launches almost instantly. Picture them as high-tech eyes in orbit detecting incoming threats and giving U.S. forces precious seconds to respond. And it doesn't stop there. Some of these missions involve classified payloads from the National Reconnaissance Office, satellites that gather intelligence across the globe and protect military communications even in times of conflict. Their importance can't be overstated. If these systems were to fail, or worse, be hacked by rival nations like China or Russia, the U.S. military could lose critical navigation and communications effectively, going blind in space. So when the Pentagon chose SpaceX for all 9 missions, it sent a powerful message. When national security is on the line, the Pentagon bets on SpaceX. Not ULA, not Blue Origin, just SpaceX. This is something no one else has managed to do in the modern competitive era, not even ULA. From 2006 to 2015, the United Launch Alliance had a total monopoly on Pentagon launches. There was no competition, no bidding, no alternatives. The Air Force handed them around $11 billion in block buy contracts for 28 national security missions. ULA got 100% of the work simply because they were the only certified launch provider in the game. But everything shifted after 2015. That's when SpaceX finally earned its military certification and broke ULA's monopoly wide open. Then came Blue Origin, with its upcoming New Glenn rocket officially entering the mix. Suddenly, the Pentagon had 3 qualified launch providers ULA, with Vulcan SpaceX, with Falcon 9, and Falcon Heavy and Blue Origin ready to compete. That's when the real contest began. Who would prove to be the true leader in national security spaceflight? The answer came loud and clear in 2026. SpaceX won all 9 missions under the NSSL Phase 3 Lane 1 program. ULA got nothing. Blue Origin got nothing. That result says it all. ULA used to win everything because no one else could compete. SpaceX just won everything while competing in an open, modern head-to-head environment against 2 other qualified companies. It's the first time in history that one company has swept every national security launch in a truly competitive field. SpaceX didn't win by default, it won because it proved it's the best. That's true. SpaceX has been dominating global launches for years now, over 100 successful missions annually, with a success rate north of 98%. By 2025, the company had launched a staggering 165 Falcon 9 rockets, plus 5 Starship Super Heavy flights, setting another new record and blowing past its 2024 total of 134 Falcon 9 launches and 2 Falcon Heavy missions. Interestingly, no Falcon Heavy launches took place in 2025, and SpaceX still crushed its own record. While other companies were still laughing off the idea of reusable rockets, SpaceX was already mastering the technology. They saw the future coming and bet everything on it. That early move changed everything. Because once SpaceX proved that rockets could be reused safely and reliably, their costs dropped dramatically. Launch prices fell, reliability skyrocketed, and out of the blue, SpaceX started winning practically every major military contract. And that's when people began realizing something uncomfortable for decades. The old guard companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and ULA had been charging the Pentagon 3 to 5 times more than necessary. Decades of overpriced delayed launches had drained billions in taxpayer money. Now that SpaceX's efficiency is forcing prices down, those same traditional contractors are scrambling to adapt. ULA's answer is the Vulcan Centaur, a partially reusable rocket that's supposed to cost under $100 million per launch. But the reality is, that number looks more like a sales pitch than a fact sheet. Vulcan still throws away its entire first stage, reusing maybe just the engines, if that. And in practice, it still costs over $100 million per launch. To make things worse, ULA's delays with Vulcan have frustrated the Pentagon for years. Those setbacks, combined with lost contracts, have pushed the company into real trouble. By 2024, reports surfaced that ULA was up for sale with a valuation as low as $2 to $3 billion, yet no buyers stepped forward. This fuels rumors that ULA is no longer valuable in the market. And then came the biggest blow of all. Tory Bruno, ULA's CEO, since 2014, stepped down to join Blue Origin. For ULA, it was devastating. Bruno wasn't just a CEO, he was the company's face, its bridge to Pentagon leadership, and one of the most respected figures in the industry. He was the man who kept ULA alive during SpaceX's rise. His departure marked the end of an era, and for many the symbolic fall of what was once America's most powerful launch company. In the meantime, SpaceX's dominance in military space launches just keeps growing. SpaceX began securing military contracts around 2017, steadily growing from a newcomer to the dominant provider. It all started back in 2017. SpaceX had been battling for years to even compete for military launches. After a legal fight with the U.S. Air Force over fair competition, the company finally broke through with a major win, launching a classified NRO spy satellite from Kennedy Space Center on a Falcon 9 rocket. That single mission cracked open ULA's monopoly on national security payloads. Fast forward to 2020, and SpaceX's relationship with the military started heating up. That year, it flew its first U.S. Space Force mission, deploying a GPS-3 SVO3 satellite. This wasn't just another launch, it marked SpaceX's entry into the crucial GPS replenishment program. And from there, The contracts just kept coming. The big leap came with the NSSL Phase 2 contracts, covering missions from 2020 to 2027. SpaceX snagged about 40% of the missions, roughly 22 out of 30 to 34 launches, while ULA kept 60%. But here's the twist: as SpaceX's rockets proved ultra-reliable, delays with ULA's Vulcan rocket actually led to some extra missions being reassigned to SpaceX. Then came expansion into new territory, missile tracking, and defense. In 2020, SpaceX won a $150 million contract with the Space Development Agency to launch experimental missile tracking satellites. By April 2023, Falcon 9 rockets were carrying the first prototypes, known as Tranche 0, into orbit. And by September 2025, SpaceX had launched 21 Tranche 1 transport layer satellites from Vandenberg, forming the backbone of a new secure military communications network. Next up, NSSL Phase 3, covering fiscal years 2027 through 2032. This is where SpaceX really cemented its dominance. Out of 54 total missions, SpaceX won 28, about 60% worth $5.9 billion. ULA followed with 19 missions, while Blue Origin managed just 7. And in the very first round of task orders, SpaceX got 7 of 9 missions, an astonishing 78% share. By 2026, SpaceX wasn't just competing, it was winning everything. The company secured a $739 million award for all 9 missions under NSSL Phase 3 Lane 1, handling missile warning and NRO payloads. That brought SpaceX's share of U.S. national security launches to over 70%. Winning these lucrative military contracts will directly strengthen SpaceX's 2026 IPO prospects, giving the company a stable stream of high-margin revenue right before going public. SpaceX is reportedly preparing for a massive IPO in 2026, possibly the largest in history, aiming to raise over $30 billion at a valuation between $1 and $1.5 trillion. The funds would go toward scaling Starship production, building orbital data centers, and even developing early lunar infrastructure. This IPO isn't just a financial move, it's the key to unlocking Elon Musk's most ambitious project, yet the full-scale development of the Starship program. SpaceX is shifting from years of testing to true mass production, with Musk setting an audacious goal, producing 10,000 Starships per year. That's where Starship version 3 comes in. It's not just an upgrade, it's a complete redesign built for scale. Every component and assembly step has been re-engineered for efficiency, speed, and high-volume manufacturing, the same philosophy that turned Tesla into an industrial powerhouse. To make this possible, SpaceX is constructing enormous gigabay factories at both Starbase in Texas and Roberts Road in Florida. Each gigabay will house 24 active workbays running around the clock. Combined, that's 72 workbays across both sites, enough capacity to roll out more than one fully assembled Starship system every single day. Meanwhile, SpaceX is also upgrading its launch infrastructure to handle the next generation of rockets. In Texas, Launch Pad 2 is currently the only site in the world equipped to support Starship version 3. Critical systems like the new Quick Connect arm, the SQD extender, are already in place for upcoming test flights. Over in Florida, Launch Pad 39A, SpaceX's historic pad at Kennedy Space Center, is being upgraded to handle Starship flights by the end of 2026. Once both sites are operational, SpaceX will have a continuous high-frequency launch pipeline unlike anything the world has ever seen. SpaceX is preparing for a defining year in 2026 as it takes on more advanced flight tests and orbital refueling demonstrations. These efforts mark the start of Starship's largest-scale launch operations to date. To maintain this pace, dependable logistics will be essential. The company's groundwork began years ago. Construction of Starship infrastructure at Launch Complex 39A started in 2019, followed by development at Space Launch Complex 37, which gained momentum through 2025. Overall, progress remains on schedule, supporting SpaceX's goal of debut flights as early as mid-2026. However, one key project lags slightly behind: the Vertical Integration Facility, often called the Giga Bay, in Florida. Its construction began in April 2025 and is expected to conclude by August 2026, narrowly missing the target for mid-year readiness. To bridge the gap, SpaceX will ship the first boosters and spacecraft from Starbase to Cape Canaveral using a transport barge. Elon Musk confirmed the plan in a September post on X, and SpaceX Vice President of Launch, Kiko Donchev, added that the first voyages will carry a single booster or ship per trip, with plans to scale up to multiple vehicles soon after. Also, Kiko recently confirmed the success of a trial transport operation. Only minor refinements are now being made to the transport vessel before it receives an official designation. Planned modifications include adding a deck enclosure to shield Starship from ocean conditions during transit. The company has already moved tank sections and other large Starship components by barge, but this test marked the first full vehicle transport. Transporting the massive rocket horizontally is a practical decision. The Super Heavy booster stands over 70 meters tall, too large to move upright across 1,500 miles of open water. A vertical structure that tall would be unstable at sea, vulnerable to wind and waves. Laying the rocket horizontally allows it to be secured along its entire length, reducing sway and improving stability during transport. Turning a rocket as large as Starship from a standing position to lying flat is a major engineering challenge. SpaceX's approach is designed to make the process efficient and safe for both the vehicle and the crew. After final assembly, Starships are expected to leave the high bay, lying flat on rail transporters or self-propelled modular transporters, SPMTs. These heavy-duty platforms move the vehicles to the dock, where cranes or ramps lift them onto barges. Once on deck, each rocket is placed in custom fixtures, then secured with straps and blocks along its 9-meter diameter for the 1,000-plus kilometer journey across the Gulf and Atlantic. The trip takes roughly 3 to 5 days. When the barge arrives at Port Canaveral, the process reverses. Cranes offload the vehicles back onto SPMTs, which then carry them by road or rail about 15 to 20 kilometers to SpaceX's high bays at LC-39A or SLC-37. This method is also crucial after post-landing operations. According to the FAA's final tiered environmental assessment, SpaceX plans to use a breakover fixture assembly to carefully lower Starship from vertical to horizontal after it lands on a drone ship and is made safe. In simple terms, the breakover fixture acts like a precision cradle for the rocket. Large metal arms hold Starship securely along its sides, while pivot joints allow the vehicle to tilt slowly and evenly. The motion is extremely gradual, just a few inches per second, with forces limited to about 1/10 of gravity to prevent structural stress. Once horizontal, the rocket is fastened along its length for transport stability. Because Starship's thin steel walls can deform if empty, the tanks are lightly pressurized during handling, about 1 to 2 bars, similar to a bicycle tire. This gentle internal pressure helps the rocket keep its shape during movement, just as Falcon 9 is handled. SpaceX also uses nitrogen gas for this pressurization. The dry, inert atmosphere prevents moisture and corrosion, protecting the rocket's stainless steel surfaces on the journey back from sea. This careful balance of mechanical control, air pressure, and environmental protection reflects SpaceX's methodical approach to handling one of the largest spacecraft ever built. If SpaceX adopts full-scale horizontal transport of Starship after ocean landings, extensive planning and new infrastructure will be essential. The first decision centers on vessels. SpaceX must determine whether recovered stages will remain aboard the drone ship used for landing or be transferred onto separate transport barges. It's likely suggest that SpaceX will keep each stage on its landing vessel throughout the journey back to port. This approach minimizes time at sea and avoids the risk of moving a massive rocket between ships in open water, an operation that could prove hazardous in rough conditions. Landing a Starship or Super Heavy booster on a drone ship is a far greater challenge than landing Falcon 9. The new system will require major design updates to both the vehicle and the ships themselves. Unlike Falcon 9, Starship has no permanent landing legs. SpaceX is likely exploring options such as foldable or retractable legs near the base, or mechanical securing systems built into the drone ship deck. These could include clamps, guide structures, or reinforced netting to stabilize the rocket during landing and transport. To accommodate the size and weight of Starship, the drone ships will need to grow substantially. Future vessels may feature deck dimensions between 300 and 500 feet, much larger than Falcon 9's 170 by 300-foot platforms. Structural reinforcements will be critical: thicker steel plating up to 20 to 50 centimeters, truss frameworks to absorb impacts from a 250-ton vehicle, and the ability to handle the thrust from 33 Raptor engines during final descent. To enable safe and repeatable landings, the drone ship would also need advanced monitoring and control systems. High-resolution cameras, radar, and LiDAR sensors could help track the booster's descent and ensure precise positioning during touchdown. Additional safety systems, such as automatic fire suppression and high-capacity water deluge networks, would protect both the rocket and the vessel in case of an anomaly. SpaceX already uses deluge systems on its Falcon 9 drone ships, but Starship's design introduces new challenges. While Falcon 9 burns RP-1 kerosene, Starship uses methane and liquid oxygen, both of which burn hotter and present higher energy density. As a result, future drone ships will likely require more powerful and comprehensive cooling and suppression equipment to manage these conditions safely. These changes represent a major step forward in ocean recovery technology. Just as Falcon 9 landings once redefined reusability, SpaceX's next phase will depend on mastering heavy lift recovery and transport at an even greater scale. The idea of landing rockets on ocean platforms is not unique to SpaceX. Blue Origin pursued a similar concept with its Jacqueline program, an ambitious effort that offered valuable insights into the challenges of offshore recovery. The first Jacqueline began its career as the Sea Chieftain, a Royal Fleet auxiliary vessel, before being acquired by Blue Origin in 2018. The company planned to transform the 180-meter ship into a mobile landing platform capable of catching New Glenn boosters while underway in the Atlantic. Executives emphasized the advantages of a self-propelled vessel: greater stability in rough seas, faster repositioning for recovery, and improved launch cadence regardless of ocean conditions. The ship's planned hydrodynamic stabilization system would further reduce wave motion and enhance recovery success rates. Despite the bold vision, the project was discontinued by early 2022. Blue Origin decided that converting an older ship was less practical than building a new vessel specifically for the task. The original Jacqueline was towed to Brownsville, Texas later that year for scrapping. A new Jacqueline, this time designed from the keel up, entered construction in early 2023 at a shipyard in Romania. Unlike its predecessor, the replacement vessel is an unpowered barge, 116 meters long and 45 meters wide, built solely for booster recovery. Final outfitting took place at Damen Shipyards in Brest, France, where the vessel was completed in mid-2024. It departed for Florida that August, towed across the Atlantic by the support vessel Harvey Stone. The Jacqueline name carried over, preserving Jeff Bezos's tribute to his mother. Officially designated Landing Platform Vessel 1, the barge is equipped with autonomous control systems to minimize the need for onboard crew during operations. When a booster lands, a recovery remotely operated vehicle connects to the rocket's aft module, providing power, communications, and pneumatic links, all while keeping human operators safely aboard Harvey Stone, stationed more than 5 miles away. Although both SpaceX and Blue Origin share the same goal, recovering and reusing large orbital boosters, their methods reflect distinct engineering philosophies shaped by company culture and operational priorities. Blue Origin's approach with Jacqueline emphasizes controlled, autonomous recovery with minimal human involvement. The company's flat, unpowered barge design is optimized for stability and safety. Every element of the system, from the recovery remotely operated vehicle to the remote control infrastructure aboard Harvey Stone, is focused on ensuring that operations at sea can be conducted with limited personnel exposure. This conservative design philosophy prioritizes predictability and safety margins over rapid turnaround or high launch cadence. SpaceX, by contrast, has favored a more dynamic and iterative model. It's "Of course I still love you" and a shortfall of Gravitas drone ships have evolved through years of real-world use, incorporating lessons learned from hundreds of Falcon 9 recoveries. SpaceX continuously refines its systems rather than replacing them entirely. The company's operational culture rewards speed of deployment, frequent testing, and incremental improvement, an approach that has made rapid reusability routine. Looking ahead to Starship, these differences may become even more pronounced. Blue Origin's New Glenn recovery system appears designed to minimize motion and risk by relying on a large, stationary platform supported by remote operations. SpaceX, however, seems prepared to accept more operational complexity, developing larger, reinforced drone ships capable of handling heavier impacts, methane fuel systems, and potential at-sea catching or transport. Its long-term focus is not just on safe recovery, but on fast relaunch capability, treating the ocean landing as one step in a streamlined logistics chain. So far, it remains unclear what happened to that astronaut. Privacy laws, including the HIPAA Act, prevent NASA from disclosing medical information. However, the space agency has clarified that the problem is not related to an injury, such as a broken bone or a cut. The cause could be a medical issue associated with microgravity, such as appendicitis, kidney stones, or gallstones. Studies show that space travel increases the likelihood of kidney stones several times over compared to life on Earth. Another possible cause could be thrombosis, a blood clot that sometimes occurs in microgravity, particularly among individuals with risk factors. Infection is not considered likely thanks to strict pre-launch quarantine procedures. NASA officials emphasize that the astronaut is in stable condition and is expected to recover. The greater challenge now lies in scheduling. Crew 11's early return may affect the timing of two upcoming missions, Crew 12 and Artemis II. Under the current plan, Crew 11 will end its mission in January, while Crew 12 is scheduled to launch no earlier than February 15th. This timing could leave only one American astronaut on the ISS for a short period. NASA is reviewing whether Crew 12's launch can be moved up, but it is unlikely that the new crew will depart before Crew 11 returns. Even if Crew 12 launches in early February, that would overlap with the planned launch window for Artemis II. Of course, in this case, Artemis II will take priority, which could result in a brief staffing gap aboard the ISS. Launching Crew 12 in late January is also unlikely. Final certifications, such as static fire tests and flight termination checks, must be completed before liftoff. With Crew 11's return still pending, an earlier launch would be difficult to achieve. On the other hand, many observers doubt that Artemis II will launch in February, despite NASA's confident statements about hardware readiness. Their skepticism is understandable given the agency's recent internal challenges. Over the past year, NASA has undergone significant upheaval. A number of long-serving employees, individuals with decades of experience, have left the agency. With them went a vast amount of institutional knowledge and professional judgment that cannot be easily replaced. This shortage of deeply experienced personnel has raised concerns about higher operational risks compared to just a few years ago. The issue is not limited to staffing numbers. It directly affects NASA's ability to manage complex technical problems. During the Artemis I mission, the Orion spacecraft suffered notable heat shield damage on re-entry. Although engineers have since implemented design changes and adjusted flight parameters to improve safety, the absence of veteran experts has prompted questions about NASA's ability to respond effectively to unforeseen challenges. Crew safety depends on timely and accurate interpretation of sensor data, quick responses to abnormal readings, and sound judgment during time-critical launch windows. When the most experienced decision-makers are no longer in the room, the margin for human error inevitably narrows. Adding to these internal pressures are external factors. Some critics fear that NASA may be rushing to meet symbolic milestones, such as aligning Artemis II's launch with the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. NASA officials have dismissed these claims, pointing to prior launch delays as proof that safety remains the top priority. Even so, the perception persists that political or ceremonial goals could influence the schedule. Beyond that, even minor disruptions could derail the timeline. A government shutdown, for example, could suspend essential operations. Likewise, small technical issues, such as faulty sensors or problems with ground support equipment, could force last-minute launch delays. Sending astronauts on a lunar mission with a relatively new and less experienced team carries inherent risk. Technology can reduce uncertainty, but cannot replace the insight and instinct that come only from long years of experience. As some within the aerospace community warn, the loss of professional intuition may be the most serious challenge NASA faces as it prepares for humanity's next steps toward the moon. Additionally, this is not the first time America's space ambitions have faced disappointment because of politics. The pattern is decades old. After Apollo, NASA shifted focus to the Space Shuttle program, which was never intended to return to the moon. Later came the Constellation program, which promised a lunar landing but never reached the point where such a return was realistically imminent. Since the early 1970s, the public has heard repeated declarations that the United States was preparing to go back to the moon. There are many concrete examples. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, President George H.W. Bush announced the Space Exploration Initiative, a detailed plan that called for a return to the moon as a step toward Mars. It was a formal national policy, backed by NASA studies and a presidential address, yet it never moved beyond the proposal stage. A similar pattern emerged in the early 2000s under President George W. Bush. His vision for space exploration clearly stated that humans would return to the moon by around 2020, establish a sustained presence there, and then proceed to Mars. That mission was to be carried out by the Constellation program, using Ares rockets and the Altair lunar lander. Billions of dollars were spent, and hardware was built, but the program was ultimately canceled before completion. The cycle continued into the 2000s. During the Obama administration, the focus quietly shifted away from the moon, though it was never completely ruled out. Then the Trump administration revived the goal under a new name, Artemis. Once again, the language was bold and optimistic. NASA officials, presidents, and lawmakers promised that America would soon return to the lunar surface, this time to stay. Yet the timeline has slipped again and again. Artemis II, Artemis III, commercial lunar landers, the Lunar Gateway. Each milestone has seen its dates pushed back, its mission structure reworked, and its cost revised. It's not that nothing has been accomplished. Hardware has been built and tested, but for more than 50 years, the same message has been repeated. We are about to go back to the moon. And for more than 50 years, that return has not yet happened. So when people say they've heard all their lives that the United States is just about to go back, they are not speaking from cynicism. They are describing a recurring pattern of announcements, funding surges, program cancellations, and restarts that stretches from the post-Apollo years to the present. Their skepticism is understandable. There is another possibility. Perhaps the real driving force behind Artemis is not exploration, but competition. The fear that another nation, especially China, might establish a lunar foothold first. It's an uncomfortable truth, but many in Washington understand it clearly. Without Chinese competition, Artemis might not exist in its current form. Political will and funding have always depended on strategic rivalry. By 2025, NASA will have spent an estimated $93 billion on the Artemis program. Each Space Launch System flight costs roughly $4.1 billion, more than some nations spend on their entire space programs each year. For that money, we've gotten one uncrewed test flight. No moon landing yet, no base, just proving we can do what we did 50 years ago, but slower and more expensive. Normally, Congress would ask hard questions. Why are we spending this much? What's the return? Can we afford it? But they're not asking those questions. Because China changed the equation. In 2019, China landed on the far side of the moon. First nation ever to do that. In 2020, they returned samples. These weren't lucky shots. They were systematic capability demonstrations. Now, China is building the International Lunar Research Station with Russia and other partners. Target date, 2035 for a permanent base. Crewed missions start around 2030. Location, Moon's South Pole, the same place NASA picked because of water ice. Here's what matters. Whoever gets there first sets the rules. The Outer Space Treaty says you can't claim territory, but it allows safety zones around active operations. First presence becomes control. Why Congress cares? American politicians hate two things: losing to rivals and looking weak. China is building a moon base while America doesn't? That's both. Suddenly, $93 billion doesn't seem too expensive. Suddenly, $4.1 billion per launch is a necessary investment. Frame it as national security, and even fiscal conservatives vote yes. This is the same pattern as Apollo. Sputnik launched in 1957. Americans panicked. NASA got funded. We reached the moon in 1969. The moment Soviet competition ended, Apollo was canceled. No rival meant no budget. Artemis survives because China provides that rival. Remove the competition, and funding disappears within 2 years. But here's the problem. SLS can't actually compete. It flies once per year. China is planning monthly missions. SLS delivers 27 tons to the moon. China's planning similar or better capabilities with their Long March 9. You can't win a space race flying once per year at $4 billion per launch. You need high flight rates and low costs. That's why Starship matters strategically, not just because it's cheaper, because it's the only system that can match China's planned